If your tech company is around $3 million in revenue per year, Salesforce probably just feels like a standard CRM that you guys have to use. But when tech companies get up to $100 million in total revenue per year, it really starts to feel like an operating system for the entire business. This is where you go to make all your decisions and feel confident about making those decisions. And it's really primarily based on one system that you can set up that I see time and time again with these $100 million tech companies that almost no $3 million tech company has. So what I want to do is explain what that system is and why it's the difference between companies that go on to scale and the ones that stall out. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Jordan Nelson. The majority of my following at the time is over on LinkedIn. You can go and check. I worked at 4 different billion-dollar startups before I started this Salesforce consulting firm. I worked at Vercel, Podium, Divvy, and Health Equity, all in the tech space, all billion-dollar plus companies, some that went on to go and exit, get acquired. And what I learned is that they had these similar patterns every single time when we set up Salesforce. So now what I do is I try to help companies like yourself that are at least $3 million in revenue, maybe a little bit more, and looking to grow to $100 million plus. And so these systems are not something that I've just Googled, looked on ChatGPT. This is something that I literally helped companies build time and time again before I even started the consulting firm. Now that we are starting this consulting firm, we've been running that for the last three and a half years or so now. We've helped a number of companies go on to raise more money, grow past those results, and hit these goals that they've had for themselves as far as revenue is concerned. So again, the inflection point that I feel like is in this system, and it's going to feel a little repetitive as we go through this video. I'm going to hit on kind of the same point in a different angle as we go through this. But at 3 million, Salesforce feels like a standard CRM. What I mean by that, it kind of feels like a data bank. So it's a place that I know I have to go and put information into, and it helps leadership kind of understand what the business is doing, the overall business health. What it doesn't really do when you're at 3 million, the way I don't usually see it set up, is it's not helping you operate the business. So people that actually run the business, so marketing, sales, customer service, finance, there's actual functions and systems we should be setting up for that workforce so that when they get in Salesforce, they feel like it's a tool that helps them do their job instead of this place that they just have to fill information out so that leadership can basically judge them on their performance. Okay. And that's really the difference here is the architecture and how you set this up and the design that is set before we actually start trying to build stuff out in there. All right, so $3 million, this is usually what I see, these kind of three things. You either have some type of glorified database like we just mentioned. You got stuff in there. It's pretty much the same as Google Sheets or some of those Excel sheets you guys are using. You just kind of transferred that data in there. It's better, right? It's better than doing it in a Google Sheet because you have a little more access to things. You can lock people out of stuff. People have the places they need to go. So if I need to find a specific person, I go to contacts. If I need to find a specific deal, I go to opportunities, right? So it's a little more organized and is a better step up, but you've pretty much at this point just transferred what you were doing manually in these sheets into Salesforce. And it's not really doing a lot of the manual work you were hoping for you instead. Also makes it really hard for leadership to start forecasting. So inside of Salesforce, the point of having data is so that we can understand when we should hire people, if we can hire people, when we have to fire people, when we have to lay people off, unfortunately. So all of that comes down to how much money is coming into the business. Makes it really hard to do that when we feel like we're making our decisions based on gut feelings instead of just looking at the numbers and knowing they're true and accurate. And that kind of brings me to my last one here, which is you spend a lot of time at this point trying to clean up data. So around that 3 million mark, again, you have data coming in, but you haven't stopped root problems like, why do we get a bunch of lead duplicates? Why is it that when I pull this report, the numbers are always different or they're inconsistent in the way they come in, or the revenue seems always weird in how we actually calculate things with our formulas. And a lot of this time that revenue operations is spending is just monitoring data and trying to clean it up and almost convince leadership that their gut feeling is the one that they should go with, which makes it hard for you to get the promotion, which makes it hard for you to grow the company, which makes it hard for everybody to look good that's trying to build the company up. Because again, leadership can't feel trustworthy with those decisions that are being made. Now, the reverse for $100 million company, right? So they have a different shift going on. Again, Salesforce is now this growth engine that they've used, that they've built up, that becomes what I like to say is the source of truth or the brain of the company. They've piped everything into Salesforce. So marketing efforts, sales efforts, customer service efforts, accounting, finance, all that is being pumped into Salesforce. That allows us to check the data, make sure it's clean when it comes in, and then feel good about the decisions that we are going to make based on that data. That's a big difference right there. They've done the work to make that happen. So that happens through things like integrating your QuickBooks with Salesforce, or integrating MailChimp with Salesforce, or Marketo with Salesforce, or if you use HubSpot for marketing, HubSpot with Salesforce. It's integrating these other tools that you use and pushing that data into Salesforce so that we use Salesforce as, if it's in Salesforce, it's the source of truth. This is what we trust. And if it's not there, that's not something we make a decision on. We don't trust that. If it's a random Google sheet, that's not trustworthy. It has to be in Salesforce to make these decisions, okay? This allows leaders to have true forecasts. They can now actually look at different budgets. They can increase budgets for certain departments. You can get that promotion or that raise. They feel better about it because they know the cash that is going to be coming in the next several months. They can help with hiring. They can help move the company forward with certain needs you guys have because, again, they feel good about the cash. Operation teams can start setting up rules that they have to have. So actually defining processes. So we can actually say, hey, when this happens, we want this to be forced upon somebody to do. An example of that: if a sales rep goes to close a deal, we might need to know what this person's billing information is. So finance doesn't always have to hit us up every single time and make us look bad to the customer because we didn't capture that. So you can set up rules to make people follow processes. And the system is going to tell the company really how they should operate. This is where the confidence comes from. I think the reverse is when you're at that 3 million, you just don't feel confident in a lot of the decisions you're making. You feel like you kind of almost have to clam up a bit, right? Like people don't want to take risk. They don't feel like being as creative or as innovative because potentially their job's on the line if they make the wrong choice. And it's really hard to know what the actual decision should be because we can't trust the numbers again. So this is really where Salesforce becomes a big key player in the business. This does not have to happen at $100 million, right? This should happen definitely before. What allows you to get up to that $100 million is what I'm saying is making Salesforce this type of growth engine for your company. This is kind of what this looks like. I won't spend a bunch of time on this slide since this is more or less what I talked about, but you have this enforced criteria of your process. So X happens, Y result, and then allows you to have some more forecasting around what we should be hiring for, what the budget should be, who should get a raise, etc. And then you have this feedback loop that it just kind of continues forward and forward. So we get someone that's interested, we send it to the sales team, they do X, Y, Z, we close that deal, we invoice them, we repeat. So it allows you to just see the patterns of what's working in your business a lot better too. All right, so here's kind of the first thing I want to discuss. Where we want to make sure sales has this piece of the puzzle as far as the system is concerned, we got to make sure that they understand what's involved in your sales process here. Okay, so we can't just move stuff through your pipeline based on hopeful thinking. And what I mean by that is crossing our fingers and hoping this guy calls us back, hoping we said the right stuff in the pitch, hoping we said the right stuff in our contract and our terms and the model that we're sending out for the pricing or service or features that we offer on our product. All of that stuff is wishful thinking. That's just kind of sending it out and see what happens. That happens a lot from 0 to 1 million. You're doing a lot of testing to prove that your business is viable. At this point, we should be doubling down on the things that work. And that starts with defining what a lot of things are. So I'm using sales because that's an easy example. You need to do that with each department within the business, customer service, marketing, etc. But here, what we want to do for sales, we want to make sure reps would mark deals, let's say as qualified or proposal sent, instead of having that happen inconsistently. If we look at this one example I'm using, this again is going to affect the next thing, which is your forecasting. If they have everything sent as open opportunity, and then we try to forecast to see how much money we're going to make this month, it's going to be really hard for leadership to know if all that's going to come in, because if it's just in an open opportunity, I don't know if that's a 10% chance of closing or if that's 100% chance of closing. So what you first have is some type of stage set up within your sales process that's going to say, hey, step one, we're going to call the person and basically do a discovery call. Maybe stage two is we extend the contract. Stage three is we negotiate any terms of agreement that they might have. And then stage four is close won or close lost. We either got that business or we didn't. We need to have a clearly defined pipeline so that forecasting becomes a lot easier. Okay. So I just kind of walked you through an example there, but again, required fields for a certain type of budget, authority, or timeline, document and discovery. So letting us know what happened on those calls. You can integrate things in the future like Gong or Outreach to Salesforce if that's easier, if that's where you do all of your type of outreach. But if nothing else, there are note sections inside of Salesforce. They should be putting that information in there so your sales manager can help coach them, say what's wrong with the pitch, try new things within the pitch if we need to dial that in better. This also helps us kind of cover ourselves in case we said anything that we didn't want to say or someone tries to use that against us at the end. And as well as your attached proposal. Again, another integration here, DocuSign. You can integrate Salesforce and DocuSign and it can automatically attach that contract that you sent out. If that's still something in the future you don't have budget for, you can attach screenshots or different PDF formats, things like that inside of Salesforce to that opportunity to show that that action has been completed. So again, cleaner pipeline, more predictable rates or cash flow that's going to be coming in, and then coaching for that sales manager. Okay, now we mentioned this with our stages. If those are defined and people are actually updating it the way that they should, then we have this capability to forecast a lot more accurately. Okay. Now, this probably sounds familiar if you're at this 3 million mark. A lot of the times it's when we want to forecast, we go to marketing or we go to sales, we pretty much just have them guess. Gut feeling, again, that phrase that we really want to get rid of. Gut feeling, how many do you think you're going to close? Now, if their quota is to close, let's say 10 deals on average, what do you think they're probably going to say? They're probably going to say 10 because they're thinking about their job. They're thinking about the money they want to make. They're thinking about performance metrics, all that kind of stuff to save themselves. So they're probably going to tell you a forecast that may or may not be really accurate. They'll probably tell you what they think that you want to hear, and it's not going to be based on what's actually going to happen. And now if we do that, we play that through and we base it on, oh, there's going to be 10 deals that close again this month. All right, let's hire somebody else. And then that person only closes one, puts you guys in a bad predicament as you try to scale the company, right? It's wishy-washy on what we want to know. So this really helps us do this, again, by having those stages defined like we just talked about, so that we can then look, hey, what is a realistic outcome that we're going to expect to see this month? What do we actually have these stages in? If those 9 out of 10 of them are all in proposal sent, then yeah, maybe we will close 9 out of 10. But if they're all just sitting in open, it's probably not likely we're going to close any of these ones. It might be a little bit of a rougher month for us. So this is where that's going to help. All right, now this is the feedback we talked about, that you're going to start recognizing patterns. This is what really helps in this system as well. So here's where we can recognize what's happening because everything's being documented. You're used to that. You've been doing that in Salesforce, but maybe it's just been a lot more sporadic. You really haven't had a reason to enter in certain information, or you don't know what information to enter in. That's what I see a lot, is that you try to capture kind of the basic stuff, company info, billing info, contact info, but we're not thinking through things like this that can help in this particular example I use with sales again. The sales rep be able to improve by capturing patterns. So over here on the first step, right, if we capture why something was won or something was lost as far as the opportunity or deal goes. So why did we win that person? Why did we lose that opportunity? Let's capture that reason. Let's put some fields in there. Let's have a note section. Let's make the sales rep, before they can close it out, fill that information out a little more specifically for us, so that again, the sales manager could go and start looking for these types of patterns. Number 2 would be marketing refines spend. Okay, so we're now knowing that we're losing a bunch of these deals that the sales rep said that are all coming from our Facebook ads, but he's able to close everything that's coming from Google and LinkedIn. Why is that? What are we promoting on the Facebook ads that doesn't seem to be correlating to the right type of person we want to talk to? What can we do there? Well, now this allows marketing to refine the spend and budget that they have. Maybe we realize, man, the majority of our spend actually was on Facebook and it's not even the right person. We're not even closing any of those people. So we can actually dial that back quite a bit. Or we need to revisit through LinkedIn or Google and figure out why those ones are working instead so that we can make this a better campaign when we push out our Facebook ads. So again, you kind of get the idea there. Allows marketing to see what that pattern is, how they can switch things up, saves you some money so that you're not just blowing through it and you're not even capturing or converting any of the people that come through. This would then lead you to a product, right? So now we have sales says, hey, this doesn't work. Marketing says, hey, this is what we have to change up. Now this can send somewhat of a signal over to the product team. If you are a SaaS business, this can help you with features. Hey, we're getting this complaint a lot, and then maybe this is why it's not closing. We don't have this yet, or a lot of people are asking for this. Our competitor offers this thing over here, this type of feature, and we don't have it. So this allows you to build a better roadmap of what you should be building out for the product. And then last but not least, right, this is your go-to-market strategy. This is where this is going to compound for you guys, that as you do this day by day, week by week, quarter by quarter, you're going to have a lot more action items, what you should be focusing on as a business to build and work on that's prioritized based on actual feedback. This is not just somebody inside the business hoping and thinking and having a feeling this is what we should work on. This is actual patterns. This is like what your audience said. This is what they said is not good about your product or service. This is what we actually have to change in order to see more revenue come into the business. And that is what we should now be focusing on as far as systems to make that work. Common complaints why this doesn't get built out. You might be thinking to yourself, like, why don't people just do this then? Like, why haven't we done this? If you had this knowledge, why doesn't it just happen? Well, you also live in the real world, right? So just like me, when I come into a business, there's probably 100 things that I would love for your company to do that are awesome to do that I know would help you, but we all live in the real world. There's budgets, there's people that you have to appease to, there's just different processes that get prioritized by somebody else. And so it's not always that you get your way with everything that you want. You kind of have to pick and choose to some degree. And I understand that. So when you're at 3 million, right, this could feel like extra overhead to try to hire someone like a consultant to come in and give you this strategy. That's going to cost money. It's going to cost time. It's going to take maintenance to do that, right? So it might feel like overhead to try to spend all this time doing this. You're not going to see ROI for a little bit on this, right? So structure looks slow when you're trying to go for speed. You're in a tech company and trying to ship stuff fast. The system is going to feel a little more like bureaucracy. And then you're going to feel like you're spending a lot of money to not really get anywhere. Okay. Salesforce has no owner. Maybe this is just rolling up to the revenue team, or it's rolling up to the VP of sales or the engineering guy, but you don't really have somebody that owns certain processes of what Salesforce should do. And that makes it hard for accountability. So who is actually in charge of making these automations that I'm describing? Who's in charge of making these fields so that we can track patterns for sales, right? We need to have an actual owner. And the third one is scale problems feel distant, right? So sometimes you just get blinded by what we're trying to do right now versus what we want to do later. So if the goal is maybe you're right on that cusp, you're at 2.9, 2.5, and you're trying to get to that 3 million per year, it's just all hands on deck to try to get to that 3 million. And sometimes that brings into the company a little bit of layer of like, just get it done. Let's just ship it. Let's just try it out. And not always 100% opposed to that, but it does sometimes blind you from, is this going to be a bunch of stuff that we have to rework in like a year from now when we're past 3 million? And a lot of times that ends up being a yes, right? So you have all this inherited debt or tech debt that a lot of people will call it, that you then have to rework. So those are some of the things that hold you back from doing this, okay? So again, better decisions are going to compound as you guys grow here. So as you put this into a priority for you, this is going to make you a lot easier to scale, one, to the next level, but then two, not have all this rework that you have to do. Sometimes people just get frustrated. They bring in a consultant, they make them do what you want them to do, and then you're frustrated with all the tech debt that you end up with because you didn't want to sit down and just talk through what should actually be done versus what you think you should be doing, okay? Okay, cool. So this is the last slide that I have here. I would say at this point, right, is if this seemed interesting to you, this feels like something you want to do, you've maybe tried a little bit of this, you just feel lost on how to do it, hit the link in the description below. It's going to send you over to see if we are a good fit for you as your consultants. And if we are, I'd love to come in, talk through the design of how your business actually works so we can build you a system that you don't have to rework as you guys continue to grow. And again, see if we're the right fit, see if we get along, if we would be the person that you want to go to and have on your team. And if that is so, look forward to speaking with you guys soon.